G'day legends, I hope that you're doing really well and having a great day. Today we're going to talk about North Korea, some massive mobilisation and recruitment, some weapons, and of course Ukraine's mission out to some oil rigs as well. Now regarding yesterday's video, a few people have reached out to me disagreeing with parts of the statement that I read yesterday regarding the death of Jordan Chadwick. And I have had multiple warnings of other people that people will try and send me information to try and save their own skin also. So like I said yesterday, and that I say often, we need to take everything in this with a degree of suspicion and hope that the official channels bring those responsible to justice. But I also would like to say, if you ever reach out to me, please know that I never divulge any sources, whether you're looking for my source on something or if you want to tell me something, that you will never be. It'll be completely anonymous between you and I, and no matter I'll protect it with my life of that information coming into my hands. Anyway, I missed something completely yesterday. So General Miley from the US had a statement about the counteroffensive, and I just somehow brushed completely over this. It was meant to go with the one from Budanov, and I'm stuck under my desk. Anyway, speaking to the BBC Sunday with Laura Krusenberg, General Miley has said the offensive kicked off about 90 days ago. It has gone slower than the planners anticipated, but that is a difference between what Clausewitz called war on paper and a real war. So these are real people in real vehicles that are fighting through real minefields, and there's real death and destruction, and there's real friction. And there's still a reasonable amount of time, probably about 30 to 45 days worth of fighting weather left. So as we know, we've talked about this a lot before the weather gets too muddy, too cold, too snowy to continue on that real offensive push. But the artillery, everything there will still stay, as well as the drones. So the Ukrainians aren't done. This battle is not done. They haven't finished the fighting part of what they are trying to accomplish. So we'll see. It's too early to say how this is going to end. They are at least have achieved partial success in what they've set out to do. And that's important. And then the rains will come in. It'll become very muddy. It'll be very difficult to maneuver at that point, and then you'll get the deep winter. And at that point, we'll see where things go. But right now, it is way too early to say that this offensive has failed or not failed. So let's take that there's 30 days left and we've had 90 days already. There's about a quarter more of the offensive to go. So we're 3/4 of the way through before where General Miley then says that the weather is really going to close out. Now, one thing I will say in this, coming from the US, is there's a lot of talk that the Abrams tanks are delayed. Again, they're hoping to get these in for this offensive and maybe in mid-September. And we are mid-September now, or still early mid, but with only 30 to 45 days left, we've only just seen really the challenges being used. The Abrams tanks may be coming in a bit late to have any real push on this. If this offensive may be waiting into then next year. As we know, Abrams tanks, big, heavy tank, aren't going to do great in the mud and the snow. And many people have raised concern about this as well. Now, multiple reports are saying also that Russia intends to recruit and mobilise between 400 to 700,000 troops for this war in Ukraine. And this is a concerning amount. Now, this is being released by the Western media as well as Ukrainian sources of this bracket between 400 and 700,000. So let's look at what the British MOD has to say. The Russian military intends to recruit 420,000 contract personnel by the end of 2023. On the 3rd of September 23, Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev stated that so far 280,000 personnel had been recruited. So these numbers cannot be independently verified. Russia's conscription continues to have negative effects on its industry workforce. The Yegor Gadar Institute for Economic Policy found that Russia's industry shortage of workers reached a new high of 42% for July 23, 7% higher from April 23. So, of course, as you're recruiting mostly men within 20 to 40, well, those same guys are going to be working in your main industry as well for, working in plants, things like this. In contrast to conscription efforts elsewhere, in the IT sector, Russia has taken steps to preserve the workforce. This likely highlights the particularly acute shortages in the sector after about 100,000 IT workers left Russia in 2022. This is because IT gets paid a fair bit more. This equates 10% of the IT sector workforce. On the 4th of September 23, President Putin signed a decree to increase the exemption age for military recruitment for IT professionals from 27 to 30. This shows that mobilization and conscription within Russia has worsened non-defense workforce shortages. In the run-up to the Russian presidential election scheduled for March 24, Russian authorities will likely seek to avoid further unpopular mobilization. So as we know, mobilization is very unpopular, but as well in these elections, we know that Putin is probably going to win. So does the popular there really matter? Well, we will see. But this is still a concerning amount of troops. There are estimates there's about 400,000 troops in Ukraine, Russian troops, but of actually frontline personnel will only be a small percentage of that. There's a lot of support staff behind the line, as well as reserves, all of this. But there could be over doubling the number. And we see this war is a war of attrition, really grinding away. If it can more than double the amount of people involved in this war, this will absolutely have an effect on where this war goes over the next 12 months. And like we just spoke about, where General Miley does say that, it's got 30 to 45 days until the weather comes in, and, it's going to have good 4, 5, even 6 months of real like a dip in the amount of actions happening in this war until the ground and the weather is good enough to launch large-scale mechanized maneuver warfare again. Well, Russia and Ukraine will have a lot of time to retrain or train new personnel in this warfare. But of course, the numbers are on Russia's side of just pure the amount of people, where the training for the Ukrainian soldiers out into the west, things like this, will be better. So it's a quality versus quantity, but where does quantity overtake quality? Well, that is to be seen. Now, both Japanese and South Korean media outlets have broken the news that the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's armoured train had arrived in Russia at the border city of Vladivostok. Now, this comes after last week Washington said they had information that Russia was seeking to buy artillery shells from North Korea in exchange for technology for satellites and nuclear-powered submarines. Although it did take Kim Jong-un a full day to get to there, because his armoured train, it's said to be seen here that all the carriages are armoured and it has to go incredibly slow due to the weight of this train. I'm glad he's in luxury while the rest of the country is really struggling. So let's actually look at where this is. Of course, this is Ukraine over here, Russia up here. Now we're just going to go right way to the west. Going around now, you've got Japan and, of course, North Korea here. So Pyongyang, where Kim Jong-un is, the capital city, and then Vladivostok here as well, where Putin is meeting Kim Jong-un. So a long way away for both of them to go, and especially for Putin from Moscow. So North Korea was previously accused by the US for supplying Wagner PMC with ammunition, and the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller has said, "I will remind both countries that any transfer of arms from North Korea to Russia would be a violation of multiple UN Security Council regulations." That said, I don't think either Russia or North Korea in the current climate really give a shit about those council resolutions. Now, Miller has also said having to travel across the length of his own country to meet with an international pariah to ask for assistance in a war that he expected to win in the opening month would characterize it as him begging for assistance. So saying if Putin has to travel the whole length of his country just to meet the leader here in a war which he thought he was going to win very quickly, well, this isn't looking too good. Now, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said, as you know, while implementing our relations with our neighbours, including North Korea, the interests of our two countries are important to us and not warnings from Washington. It is the interests of our two countries that we will focus on, like we just spoke about with new mobilizations, new recruitment, new training. But we have seen this war really move into, I guess, an attritional phase. The amount of soldiers on the front line and how you can arm them and keep shells up to those guns is going to be incredibly important for Russia and Ukraine. And of course, Ukraine has a lot more countries supporting that effort, where Russia has less, but North Korea does have huge stores of this, as well as tight connections with China, same as Russia. And if China then do supply weapons like that in, that would spark a whole new phase of this. So Rustem Umerov, Ukraine's new defense minister, has also requested more weapons on one of his first addresses seen here in English.
Next point is weaponry. We need it today, we need it now, we need it more. I take this opportunity to address our international partners we are stronger together. We're grateful for all the support provided, but we need to continue our war coalition efforts to win this war. We need more heavy weaponry, and again, heavy weaponry. Ukrainian warriors today are sacrificing their lives for the core values of democracy and freedom.
So I think that they need more and more heavy weaponry. We've seen a lot of heavy weaponry go into Ukraine over the past 18 months, but that they still need more and more to achieve their goals there. So what will actually come in, we're not too sure on how these new packages are going to look, although there are rumours that more rocket cluster munitions from the US will go into Ukraine, as well as other countries are trying to free up more Leopard 1 era tanks as well. Now, the big news, I guess, of the day was off the coast of Crimea in 2014 and 15, Russia captured multiple oil platforms. And since then, they have just been abandoned or used as weapon and fuel caches for helicopters, as well as for some electronic monitoring equipment for the Black Sea. We have seen multiple videos come out over the last month of defense intelligence personnel on RIB-style boats doing daring missions to these rigs, as well as being attacked by a Sioux Russian aircraft as well. Now, we're going to look over the video here as well, but I just think missions like this are no doubt incredibly brave, but I do believe they carry far more PR value than potentially strategic value. But it does once again show that Russia is not completely dominant in the Black Sea, and that Ukraine's reach into the Black Sea is also growing. So this video, this will be on my Telegram if you'd like to watch the full thing, and we're just going to skip through it here. For some reason I can't download this, but the defense of Ukraine posted this as well.
Теплий, приємний світанок поблизу узбережжя Чорного моря. Помірні хвилі м'яко б'ються.
This is like a 13-minute movie of how this assault against these, well, I shouldn't say assault, how going to these actually became.
Об борт катера. Море спокійне і лагідне.
So skip forward, and they talk about this, and then they land on these. There was no resistance there. These are not occupied, although they are under control of the Russians, and the Russians are using it for electronic equipment as well as some weapon storages. There's no one actually then on these. So here we see approaching one of the rigs here.
Ця операція була в таємниці весь час, тому що якби ворог зрозумів, що ми наскільки зухвало до нього підходимо, він би якось противодіяв нам. Так.
Росія використовувала вишки у військових
antenna on top here that the Russians are using for electronic equipment as well.
На борових платформах росіяни влаштували склади з боєприпасами і паливом для гелікоптерів. Також вони розмістили на вишках радіолокаційні станції, за допомогою яких моніторили ситуацію в усьому Чорному морі. Шлях до цілі для спецпризначенців.
So, of course, going a long way at open sea is incredibly dangerous, and that they used many other services like drones, intelligence, whatever, to plan where they're actually going on and in and out of these. And it is a very interesting video, but we do see here using, I did miss it, like professional style cameras as well, as we said, getting like good footage of this operation taking place, because of course this is very good for PR. This has been all over the internet all day. And Elon Musk's Twitter, like his Starlink, is now broken, which is great. But we then do see at the end them, fuck's sake, work your fucking website out. Then we do see where we looked over this footage a while back, where they then are engaging, I believe, a Su-30 Russian fighter jet here, and the fighter jet did fire multiple shots back at them as well. Now, it is also spoken about that one of their guys did go overboard here, and after 13 hours in the sea, that they did recover him and that he was all right. And also that they had a successful hit with the rocket on the Russian aircraft that damaged it, and then it needed to fly away and abandon its mission of hitting these boats. So very interesting. But at the end of the day, this, the way I see it, is a PR stunt, and I guess a very dangerous one for these special forces style troops here, that these could have gone wrong very quickly for realistically a flag operation, to put a flag on this, take out some of the equipment. But I'm not going to say that anything there is super, super important. To say that Ukraine now occupy these is incorrect. There's not like people waiting on it with the guns. I guess we'll see how important these are, because if these are so important, we will see then Russia bomb them and sink them into the ocean. So we will see where that is. But I do question some of what seem to be more PR stunts like this, but it also does show that Russia's full scope over the Black Sea may not be anywhere near as much as we first thought, with operations like this, landings in Crimea of small boat teams similar, as well as the kamikaze drone boats as well. So Rybar had this about the oil platforms. Why does Ukraine's main directorate of intelligence need empty gas rigs in the Black Sea? But talking about where these rigs are. So minimum of 55 Ks off the Crimean Peninsula here as well. So very interesting operation, but again, maybe I'm missing something, but I just don't see the full importance in this other than PR. And I do know that PR is incredibly important in this as well. Also, the UK released this video of their Miley heavy lift drone here that I thought was pretty cool. So, of course, these can take out casualty or bring in or out systems of ammo, weapons, jerry cans for water, everything like this. I know a few guys involved in things like this. So, of course, here you can put this as a dummy, but you can put a full casualty under this and fly it out. It can lift 180 kilograms and have a range of about 70 kilometers. Of course, though, this is going to be a large target, as the drones on the front line are already a big target. And, of course, this is a lot bigger drone than others, but a hell of a lot smaller than, say, a helicopter. But we'll see more and more things come in like this. But that would be pretty wild to be, down on the battlefield and then get picked up by a drone. So it'll be interesting to see how these are implemented there. And for Ukraine, with a lot of these Western weapons, this is like the perfect testing ground for some of these. We get to see exactly how these work. Javelins, NLAWs in the beginning, we get to see how they actually performed against modern Russian armor. And with systems like this, we get to see how it actually goes. And the private companies that are behind this will then, use this information to then sell it to wider defenses around the world. This video as well in the Kremenar forest of Incentury Munitions, dropping over a number of positions here, raining down as well. Now, is this a war crime? No. Many people report all of this is a war crime. No, it is not. Incendiary munitions can be used, can't be used against civil targets, and have to be looking at what the scope of use actually is. They can be used, of course, for marking targets. They can be used for illuminating targets. Plenty of things. Although there is some grey zone in some of the laws, we use them. Ukraine and Russia both use them, but it is interesting to see over the forest area here. And the reason I put this is we talk about the Kremenar forest a lot as this built-up area, and a lot of the footage we see that looks like this, that's where that forest is. And I'm going to show you where that is before we have a look then over the maps. So we're talking to then the west of Rubizhny, of course, is Kremenar and the forest here. And we do see this is very, very fluid in this area over the past couple of weeks. But of course, we have Ukraine, the capital of Kyiv, the red areas occupied since 22, and the purple since 14. Of course, this is Crimea, where we just spoke about, and of course, the Black Sea. Now, we're going to come first is onto the Zap front, where Ukraine is having its most success down here south of Kyiv on, I guess, now being called the Robotyny front, although some people will call it the Tokmak front. Of course, Tokmak down here is where people are saying that Ukraine really need to get to by that 30 to 45 days that General Mark Miley was talking about before winter sets in. So let's step back. And between yesterday and today, we don't see any change in this area, but we did see a lot before that. We did see a step then, of course, into Novopohrivka, as well as this step up from the Russians. So we're going to look over a few other sources in this same area, as there has been some movement. Between yesterday and today, we do see that daily Ukraine map update has put in this Russian advance out to the west from here, but no real change down to, of course, the east of Novopohrivka here. Although one interesting thing down to the east in here, we have seen more Ukrainian tanks as well. So we do know that there are tanks operating here as well, which tanks will need to be on that breakthrough through these lines. Yes, there has been breakthrough of infantry through some of these areas, but we haven't seen too much of that heavier machinery move through as well, which will be needed as they're moving through more of these lines on their offensive campaign as well. So let's then have a look at what then Suryak Maps says. So day 563, situation on Zap front. While Ukrainian army continues the advances south and eastwards of Robotyny, Russian army managed to counterattack and managed to recapture a series of positions north of Lvovy. Now, we knew this a couple of days ago, but now Suryak Map has updated on theirs as well. Now, this is this bit we see pop out there. Now, let's have a look at what War Mapper show over these areas between yesterday and today. So, of course, yesterday on the left and then today on the right. So it does show more of a push west of course, but to the east of Noprivka here, that Ukraine is expanding its amount of control as well to the south of Noprivka here, taking more ground confirmed in the grey zone here as well. So, of course, pushing down into there. And, of course, these thin red lines are the defensive works, which Ukraine is really in the midst of getting currently. Now, let's just push a little bit further then to the east and go into then this Ryazani area. So we did see that Russia made a fair bit of ground just here to the north of Putin, but between yesterday and today, we do see that Ukraine did take some of this back in here. But no change out near Novonetsky, Novomorsky there either. Let's have a look then on the day of the Ukraine map update and see what is being shown. And it does show this advancement we talked about, but doesn't show Ukraine taking some back, and no change near Novonetsky, Novomorsky as well. Now, let's have a look over some of these different areas. So, of course, here just to the west of Ryazani, situation southwest of Donetsk, Ukraine army restarted the assaults to Novodonetsky, trying to encircle the town from the south. Attack was repelled. Moreover, troops continued consolidating the control over the northern shore of Shtanka River, but did not reach the town of Novomorsky again during the last hours. So, let's have a look at where this actually is. We know this is getting more and more of a heated area here as well. So, Novodonetsky, of course, this is Novodonetsky. Now, I believe Surak Maps does show that Ukraine have a more westerly push in here than the deep state is showing, and trying to encircle the town down to the west here, as well have crossed the river here just to the north west of Novomorsky, and are putting in more positions here as the assault here grows as well. And we know there's increased shelling in that area too. So from here, we're just going to move further to the west, come up near then Avdiivka here. Now, Opitny, this has been a hot topic of movement as Ukraine is making some ground here, but neither the deep state or Daily Ukraine map update show any movement there. It doesn't show the movement that Russia had from Vasily as well. Now, let's have a look then at what Surak Maps says here. Now, situated north of Donetsk city, Ukrainian army continued advancing north of Opitny and reached the nearby outskirts of the town where clashes with the Russian army are taking place. So, Ukraine continue pushing into Opitny here. And as we know, that they're probably going for this airfield here, although that will be very, very unusable. You can't use anything that close in the air defense, but would still be a very strategic area to then have. Now, we're going to move further up and then into Bakhmut. Now, of course, we're looking just to the south of Bakhmut, Klishkivka and Rivka-Kodymivka. We know Ukraine is having a lot of push here. Now, Klishkivka, we do see that Ukraine did manage to take back some ground. So we have the 11th and then to the 12th, Ukraine did push further down than the road here and towards then the train line here. As we know, they're trying to capture the train line in and around Klishkivka and Rivka, and of course the north of Kodymivka there as well. So let's look at then what Shrek says. Situation south of Bakhmut, Ukrainian army continue advancing inside Klishkivka and are about to take full control over the town as Russian army only controls a position adjacent to the highway. So we do know that this town for a long time was going to come under Ukrainian control, that even yesterday, the days before, was 80-90% under control, and the only positions that Russia hold are adjacent then to the railway, which is here, and that Ukraine is pushing further and further in. And this is simulated across the same here, but does show Russia control even less on this map. So if we have a look and compare these. So, of course, this is the train line. This is the same bit of line that it still shows that Russia has a little bit over the train line here, but slightly different in here. But this area in these paddocks is fairly similar as well. A War Mapper have an update here as well. That does show Ukraine managed to get more area on Klishkivka and in near Kodymivka as well, but Russia is pushing out in between Andrivka and Klishkivka there as well. We do know Russia are counter-attacking some areas in there. Now, where we are going to go, some we haven't spoken about for a while, of course, Bakhmut is to the north, being then Yahidny. Now, this doesn't show any advancement or movement here, but Yahidny is talked about by Suryak here, saying situation of Bakhmut. During the last days, Russian army made small advances along the railway south of Berkivka. So, let's have a look at then Berkivka, Yahidny. This is then the rail line coming through here, and that we see the advancement down the railway here. Of course, this paddock is this paddock and advanced out through here, just past where this stream runs, I believe, there. So made an advancement out here. And we have seen that Ukraine was pushing very hard in this area in Berkivka, Yahini in the beginning of the counteroffensive, but Russia did manage to get some ground back. I do think that we will see a Bakhmut 2.0 at some stage. Well, we need to if Ukraine's going to occupy it. It doesn't look like Russia's going to give up any ground just willy-nilly. So there's going to be at some point a Bakhmut 2.0, and we know that this area is a hot spot of fighting. It's very defensible due that the guns can be put in defilade positions to shell this area. Now, none of the maps show this, but ISW does say that it was confirmed by geolocated footage that Russia had some gains near Sinkivka out here. Now, I can't even find their map from yesterday. It's one of the things that ISW can't scroll through, but we do know that other maps are claiming Russia has a lot of advancement in around this area, but it has been quiet for a while. And this is, of course, in the northeastern part of the country. Of course, this is Kupiansk and Sinkivka here. So ISW is still showing less control here than the deep state is showing, and of course, a lot less than, like, say, Surak will show. But we do know that they are mounting a lot of soldiers here in either an attempt on Kupiansk, which is a headquarters for the Ukrainians in this area, or to try and draw soldiers away from the southern offensive where Ukraine is having success up into these areas, and Ukraine doing somewhat vice versa to try and draw soldiers down here. But as well, not too much happening on the front lines, and like we spoke about maybe a quarter bit more of the offensive to go until the weather does get really bad for further offensive actions like this. But legends, that is it from me today. Have a great day, look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.